times.
Yeah, Willow is a kindergartner, and she's being a right ass about it. Hey, stop
Well,
it.
you know, it's...
Well, I'm downstairs today because Eric had to go to, like, just party for their friend who's, like, celebrating their, like, anniversary of starting testosterone or something, I guess. Like, I love the genderqueer community, but I'm like, how many anniversaries do we have to celebrate for things? Like, it's so many. So many celebrations.
That's funny. That's a very niche celebration.
Yeah, and I feel like there are several things like that where it's like anniversary of starting this hormone, anniversary of like top surgery, and I'm like, okay, like it's a lot of parties.
It sounds like a lot of parties.
Can we just have a party? Like, do we have to have some elaborate medical reason to do it? I don't know. I'm like, I'm clearly not the authority on it. It has just been my observation in this community, as a like person with a partner that's part of it.
Oh, sure. No, I'm just like, you know, we all love a party.
We all love a party, but I don't necessarily need, like, we could just have a party.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I'm like, having a party to celebrate the anniversary of when you started taking a hormone feels odd to me, but who am I to judge, I guess?
Well, let's get into it. Let's get into it, babes.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've got my new pipe. I'm like, I don't want to spill my bowl, but it's shaped like a coffin.
I do see oh my god. And it's got a little spooky. Oh wait, hold on. I can show you. Look at the stickers I got for my phone. It's like a teacup with like an eye floating in the smoke, and then a crystal, and then I got a purple glittery case. So the whole thing is very like.
Well, this is, I'm christening this new pipe on this episode. So it's like the weed keeps wanting to slide out because there's nothing.
Yeah, it needs a little tack.
Yeah,
exactly. A little stickiness.
So we'll see how it hits.
Yeah, oh, of course. I've got a little Bolski loaded. So I'm thinking with the Samsara episode, we're definitely going to be leaning like kind of Joe Rogan, kind of let's get really high and talk about the implications of reincarnation, what sort of our takes are. Because actually, if I were to just say what reincarnation is and how long it's been around, that's a 30-second segment. So,
yeah, and like, there's a lot of really interesting things to talk about with the Dalai Lama too.
No, it's really So, I think we've got a lot of good stuff. I think we've got a lot to talk about. Also, if you want to throw me a Zodiac card, I can't find mine, but I know we got strength reversed, so
cool. Mine are upstairs, so
oh, okay. Well, then we're doing it for Taurus. No, because that was my backup.
Oh, then yeah, there we go. It's for Taurus.
It's for Taurus.
Yeah, let's do it. So then if you want, we can do Holy Basil first and then have it with Samsara. Yeah, I'm interested. So, I'm ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Am I starting?
No, I am. Can you hear Willow chewing?
I can a little bit. I mean, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Willow, why did you wait to eat until I was... Okay, well, whatever. I'm going to introduce it, and then I'm going to just tell people that Willow's downstairs with me recording, and it's her birthday tomorrow, so people can't be mad. She's an Aries. She's unapologetically taking up space.
And good for her.
Yeah, honestly, we could all learn something from Willow.
And we have. And that's the podcast for the week.
There we go. The end. Before we start, Nick, if you haven't had these, you need to. Sheila G's Brownie Brittle.
Oh, what?
Yeah, so these are a thin, crunchy, gluten-free brownie topped with Reese's Pieces candy. These are like
awful.
These are so crunch and so good. Like,
no, you know it's actually it's so funny you mentioned that, because yesterday I did order takeout from Say It With Me, the place that I always get takeout because I'm not being paid to advertise here. But I ordered a whole ass brownie. Because I was like, so I'm on day 5 of not smoking, and
you haven't punted a toddler. Congratulations.
I have not punted a toddler, but I have had the sweet tooth from hell, and nothing seems to be touching it. You know what I bought today? Blueberry Pop-Tarts.
Oh my God, what a throwback.
But I'm like, I literally am trying to like scratch the serotonin itch with like, I ate fucking Fruity Pebbles the other night, like half in a daze. Because I was like, I'm craving, I know what I'm craving, but I'm trying to scratch that itch with food. And I'm
you're like, I'm going to put something else in my mouth.
So I'm having some very weird side cravings.
Oh, when I first quit smoking, you know what I did? I got a bag of blow pops.
Oh, see, that sounds divine too.
Yeah, quitting smoking's no joke. I genuinely like still very vividly remember. Like, it sucks, but I'm proud of you. You are a mighty warrior, and corn is no place for you.
Corn is no place for me. Okay, right. So.
Okay. Hello and welcome to Wands and Fronds, the weekly podcast where we cover magic, herbalism, and more. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Nick.
And we're your co-hosts. So a quick disclaimer up top. I'm recording downstairs, so y'all might hear Willow in the background. Apologies, but you have to deal with it because tomorrow's her birthday and she unapologetically takes up space. But with that said, I'm talking about holy basil. Tulsi is probably the way a lot of y'all have seen it described, but it's kind of a big deal. We'll get into it, but it's like heavy hitter territory.
Oh yeah, no, Tulsi is that girly.
She is that girly.
But okay, so this week I'm talking about the endless cycle of death and rebirth, known in Eastern religions as Samsara. So that's a really rough outline of what we're talking about, but I think we're gonna kind of blast off to another dimension with this one.
We are gonna blast off, and y'all, this is if you imbibe in the marijuana, roll yourself something delicious to smoke and lay back and let our dulcet tones invade your moment. Because I think this is going to be a fun one. But we're going to actually do like the plant topic up top. So, but before we get into that, Nick, when did you feel the magic this week?
Well, you know, I'll tell you, today especially has been. So today we did have like a work meeting that basically consisted of doing a wine tasting of Sicilian wines.
Oh, so hard.
And then we all had to fillet and then eat a whole sea bass.
Wow, moment of silence for the difficulty that Nick endured at his work today.
But I will say that was actually a lovely time.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And the sea bass itself was very nice. But also it's finally back to feeling like spring. So, I mean, for people out there who are in Texas, you know, it was like 91 degrees on my birthday on the 3rd, and we are recording 10 days later, and it was actually like 80 degrees today. But in the meantime, it has been like in the 50s and cloudy for like a goddamn week and a half.
Okay, the weather is so whack because here we were supposed to have like 60s, like upper 60s into the mid 70s and sunny. It's fucking like misting outside like this is goddamn Seattle. Like
yeah, so
what?
Like, but the sun came out today and it was actually warm again. And the sky was blue, the clouds were out. I mean, truly, what more could you want?
That is magical. I think my moment, and I texted you, Nick, I went to another Aries friend of mine, her birthday party last weekend, which was so much fun. But as part of her gift, I actually made her like a fresh cut flower bouquet from my own garden, like daffodils and some zinnia and my sweet peas that honestly, like, Bath and Body Works wasn't like that far off with the sweet pea scent. Like, we're all gonna have to just have a moment of real talk with that. But putting together this bouquet from my garden, I felt like fucking Persephone. I was like, I am a spring goddess. These are my gifts. And it just was like, it was amazing. It was such a magical time. And it smelled divine. I have these like gorgeous daffodils that were in my mixed daffodils that I got from Holland Bulbs. What? Shout out. And they're like, the smell on them is gorge, but they're not like regular daffodils. They're cool daffodils. They have like multiple layers in the center cup. So it kind of looks like there's a little carnation in the daffodil, but they smell like fucking heaven.
Little ruffly boys.
They're roughly boys. They're definitely giving us like Ron at the ball. But let's get into it because I think this is gonna be a fun one. But holy basil. So again, heavy hitter topic, because it's also known as sacred basil, holy basil, kind of a big deal. It's also very, very popular with herbalists, and in particular in Ayurveda, which we'll get into in a second. But I'm pretty sure I've already talked about it on this podcast, but there was this quote that I read about Tulsi basil that was like, for the new herbalist, if you're ever worried about prescribing someone the wrong herb, just tell them to drink a cup of Tulsi tea every day, and you'll almost always be right. Like, what a shining endorsement. It helps with so much that it's like, if you're confused and you don't know, Tulsi basil. It's like my European history teacher for the AP exam was like, when in doubt, Charlemagne. It's a good rule. When in doubt, Tulsi basil. But the other thing that I love about it is that it's actually like really easy to grow. So I don't know if any of y'all have tried to grow like garden basil, Italian basil. That's a finicky bitch. I'm just gonna say it. Like, it's one of those herbs that's kind of like a diva.
Looks completely different depending on the time of day you even look at it. Like,
yeah. So
she's moody.
She is. And I grew some purple basil last year that did really well. But honestly, like, at the end of the day, the Tulsi basil was the fucking easiest thing I probably grew as far as herbs go last year. I mean, I'm replanting it by seed this year because I like changed out my little cedar grow box that I have. So, we'll see. Maybe last year it was just a great year for Tulsi. But in my experience so far, it has been one of the easiest herbs to grow. So what does it look like? Well, it's a shrubby boy. Okay. It can get up to about 3 feet tall, but it's really like, it's cute. It's kind of fluffy. It looks a lot like basil. The leaves are green and purple. They're arranged in opposites, and the stem is like slightly hairy, which is different than garden basil, but really like the leaves look kind of similar when they're full grown. The flowers are really cute too. They range from like white to this pretty like light purple lilac, and they're just like with regular basil, they're the shoots that have all the tiny little flowers on them, which are just like super cute. Bees go bananas for the Tulsi flowers. Like, I can confirm the bees live for these flowers. So if you want to make the bees happy, also an excellent choice. But it's native to the lowland regions of India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, southern China, Thailand, and Malaysia. So you might have noticed from that list of locations, this is a very geographically like Asian plant. Because of that, there's not a lot of like medieval antiquities Western herbalists writing about it. Like there's no Culpeper writing about Tulsi basil. But it is like a huge plant for Ayurveda, like people that do Ayurvedic medicine. In India, Tulsi is also considered sacred to the Hindu god Vishnu, kind of a big deal. And the plant itself is seen as like a manifestation of the goddess Vrindavani, or of Lakshmi, who is the goddess of wealth and also happens to be Vishnu's consort. So makes sense that, you know, they'd share that interest. But in Sanskrit, Tulsi literally means that which is incomparable. So it's a big deal. Again, this is pretty easy to grow in warm climates. So I really do like suggest y'all give it a try if you're interested. Just like a brief rundown on how to grow it. I personally sourced my seeds from this company called Strictly Medicinal. So I found them because it's like the seeds that were carried at my local herb shop, but they have a really badass website too. So like I do recommend. And they have these like cute little kits. Like you can get a tea garden set of seeds or like a beginner's Ayurveda garden. So you can kind of like one and done if you don't know what to grow. I also like planted some nettle seeds that I got from there a few weeks ago. So fingers crossed. But Strictly Medicinal is like a really like legit source of like good herbal seeds online. Moving forward, with Tulsi, you want to plant it somewhere that gets good light, but I wouldn't like stress about full sun because it actually really enjoys some dappled shade. And I think if you're in places that are hotter, most of your plants are probably going to want a little of afternoon shade because none of us like being roasted alive. But I grew mine on my my porch is kind of like an interesting direction because it's like it's on the south tipped side of east. So it's like not southeast because that's way too south facing, but it's like a little canted to the south of east. But I also have like two big trees. So I grew it out on my porch with like basically eastern exposure and dappled shade. And the Tulsi was like, boom, we love it. So they're also perennials. If you're not like me and you don't just like rotate your garden every year because I don't have enough to do, why wouldn't I just pull up my plants and start over? You can just like keep one going year after year. So overall though, they're really easy. Like you can treat them well. They like a light kind of loamy soil, but they'll also take hold in like just about anything. So, you know, don't fret about your Tulsi. You're going to have like plants that are kind of divas. Don't worry about Tulsi. Spend all your mental energy on those bitches. They are plants that can get like a little bit of a powdery mildew situation, just like regular basil. But one of the ways that you can kind of like help mitigate that a little bit is to water at the base of the plant to make sure you're not letting like wet dirt splash up on the leaves. It's a good rule of thumb for most of your plants. But again, some places just have more powdery mildew than others. And if you get it, like it happens, make that really disgusting milky like water. It's like half milk, half water. Put it in a spray bottle, spray it on your plants. It's like kind of gross, but it does work and it kills the mildew. So the last thing I'll note is you don't want to fertilize it. And the reason is like when you fertilize something like Tulsi, it can actually like kind of go off and produce a lot and get really full really fast, which sounds great. But the volatile oils are what have the medicinal properties in them and even like the tasty properties. And when it explodes like that and puts on a lot of new growth rapidly, you're actually diluting the oils within the plant. So it seems counterintuitive because you're like, wouldn't I want to feed it and have it grow? Yes, but within reason and slowly so you can enjoy all the delicious oils. So again, it's really easy. Don't stress about it. But again, there's some different varieties that you'll see. And I'm talking about Strictly Medicinal because I just am obsessed with them. But they have this really cool variety pack actually that has the 4 different like common varieties you see of Tulsi. So there's Krishna, Rama, Temperate, and Vana Tulsi. Temperate Tulsi of those is probably the easiest to grow. So if you were going to pick one, that's the one I would go with. But if you want to grow 4 different kinds of Tulsi basil, you can like go buy a kit with all of these in it, which I think is, for fellow plant nerds, kind of fun. So unsurprisingly, they taste like basil. No big shocker there. It's in the mint family. I think that a Tulsi tea with a little bit of honey in it is like, that's the ticket, because I love like basil with a bit of sweetness. So that's one of my favorite ways to have it. But also, and I haven't done this before, but I want to do it next summer, I think this is a great candidate for sun tea. It's really, really tasty.
I would love like a Tulsi sun tea.
Right? Like, I'm here for it. I think that that's the way to go. Okay, but let's talk about medicinal uses. Disclaimer. Y'all, I'm not a doctor. Nick's not a doctor. This podcast is not intended to treat or diagnose anything. Please don't take your medical advice from podcasters. Talk to your doctor. Okay. So up top, before we talk about like the medicinal stuff, I do have to point out, so herbalist Rebecca Altman, who's like really well respected, has pointed out, as well as other people, that they don't tend to see much difference in the herbal effects between holy basil and common basil. Do with that what you will. I think that if you have a spiritual tie to something like Tulsi and you feel drawn to it, that's going to have like a noted impact on how your body responds to it. So, you know, it's the great thing about working with plants. Take what you want, leave the rest. We're all just doing our best. So energetically, this is a plant that's considered both warming and cooling, which, you know, you might be like, how? That feels made up. But it's because it's got these like stimulating volatile oils, which can help with conditions that cause like cold, congestion, you know, but it's also like initially stimulating as a nervine. So it's got this like ability to kind of like cool things down while stimulating them. And it's like, I think if you think about mint, that's how something has those like that duality in it. So some herbalists do recommend starting the day with a cup of Tulsi tea. And I think that that also sounds delightful. I'm dead without caffeine in the morning because now I work in elementary school and have to be up at an ungodly hour. But if you're one of those people that can just have herbal tea in the morning, Tulsi might be good for that. It's also suggested, though, in situational depression. So I want to point out that this is different than like generalized depressive disorders. Situational depression, when we're looking at it in like the herbal tradition, if you think about things like a close family member passes away, or, you know, you lose a job, or there's like a huge life overhaul, these situations that like bring on depressive symptoms are not something that would necessarily have someone like diagnosed as having depression. I just feel like it's really important to make that distinction.
Yeah, we're not talking about major depressive disorder.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you're going through some shit, Tulsi tea is potentially a really great ally. It is, again, it's in the mint family, so it's got this like opening kind of balancing situation. So I think that it makes sense energetically that it would be good for like grieving or like moving through these like big intense emotions. There's also a lot of people that suggest it for, you know, digestion. It's a mint, the basil, same thing. It can help with like bloating, indigestion, things like that. That minty friend of ours is also good for like sinuses, congestion. You know, it does that thing where it like opens up and helps promote drainage, but is also cooling and soothing. It has a really like long history of use for respiratory balance. It's because it's also good at being an expectorant, right? So in India, it's really commonly recommended as like if you have like bronchitis or some sort of like cold that's causing bronchial mucus, they'll suggest Tulsi tea. So it's great for that. It's also an immunomodulator, which is basically a fun word that means it's helping it helps to like strengthen and balance your immune system. So they've done some clinical trials and they've been able to show like an improvement in the immune function of healthy volunteers. And by healthy volunteers, that typically just means it's not someone who's dealing with like an active illness. I just feel like that language doesn't feel super clear when you're looking at clinical studies, but it doesn't mean that like they're just giving it to healthy people to see what happens. It's like they're giving it to people who don't have other underlying conditions initially. There have also been some studies that indicate that Tulsi could be a good ally for people that are going through like cancer treatment. And there have been preclinical studies that show that Tulsi can have a preventative effect against chemical-induced skin, liver, oral, and lung cancers. So they, in these studies, showed that Tulsi was able to like increase antioxidant activity, which helped inhibit metastasis. So basically it kept things from metastasizing. So they're doing some additional research into using Tulsi to protect against like radiation-induced sickness. So these are, again, like these are specifically like chemical-induced cancers, not necessarily genetic cancers. I just want to be like, again, really clear on that. This isn't like someone who has an inherited genetic predisposition. It's someone who was like exposed to some shit.
Mesothelioma. Call now.
Oh my God. You were a loved one. It's again a nervine, so it's good at regulating your nervous system. Our friend Rebecca Altman, she suggests Tulsi for people with ADHD, heyo, because it can help calm and balance your brain. But also one of the important things it helps with is memory issues. Notoriously, people with ADD and ADHD suffer from like memory problems. Our brains don't like to keep it. The number of times I've had to like sit there for a minute and a half to think about a word that I definitely know is kind of embarrassing as a grown woman. So finally, the stimulating and warming actions of Tulsi can help promote menstruation. So if you have amenorrhea, if you have not had your cycle, the antispasmodic actions, though, also soothe menstrual cramping. So that's pretty dope because a lot of things that will stimulate menstruation don't do shit about the cramping. It's kind of just like a bam and the floodgates open. Tulsi's like, we're going to open the floodgates, but then also give you a massage, which is nice.
That's nice of her.
And she's polite. She's polite like that. That action is, though, why you should avoid Tulsi if you're pregnant or trying to become pregnant. There you go. I was going to include at the end here that ancient Indian texts do describe using a poultice of Tulsi roots and leaves for snake bites and scorpion stings. Do with that what you will. But again, please go to the ER if you were like bit or stung by something scary and poisonous like a scorpion. I like don't have.
But you know what? I actually learned, and I'm gonna throw this on because you already brought it up. There is actually apparently an app for people who might be more inclined, I guess, to encounter these things in like Australia and Asia, etc., where it tells you where the nearest dose of antivenom is.
Okay, hot tips for people in those areas. Yeah,
I think it's worldwide because it's like based on Google Maps.
Yeah, I mean, but like, I don't know. I don't think myself living here in Los Angeles is going to have an immediate need for anti-venom. But I'm like terrified of scorpions. I think that.
Well, I was going to say you say that, but there's scorpions in your area.
Oof, yeah,
there's hot scorpions in your area looking to meet you.
Wow, that's definitely worth paying $9.99 a month. So let's talk magic. So again, this is a plant that doesn't have like a strong tie to Western tradition. So I've seen a lot of mixed messages about its association. A few places list like it's Mars, it's associated with Scorpio. And I am fine with people thinking what they think, but I'm going to give you my personal opinion, my hot take. I get like big Jupiter vibes from Tulsi. Let me explain. So it's very like generous and expansive with the physical and emotional properties it treats, but it's also associated with like wealth and prosperity through Lakshmi and Vishnu, who Tulsi again is said to be sacred to, the second god in the Hindu Trimurti. Vishnu is said to be responsible for returning to Earth during troubled times to restore the balance of good and evil. So that's giving me Libra vibes. But Vishnu being like one of the major Hindi deities also kind of like lends itself to my Jupiter theory, because when you think about the deities traditionally associated with Jupiter, you're looking at Odin, Zeus, Hera, Dagda, Isis, like head honchos, right? Vishnu's kind of an HBIC. Again, Jupiter. And the like balancing thing with Libra, like one of the things like with Vishnu is like Vishnu's supposed to also be helpful for things like balancing chakras. And again, this is all like, not again, first time. This is all very like surface understanding of Hindi. I'm like just full on disclaimer as a white lady here, but that was my understanding from what I was reading about it. So I do think, though, with all that said, like this is a really good plant to work with if you're feeling out of alignment. But also, I think if you're wanting to like manifest some of that like boss energy, right? So personally, though, I've been feeling like hella out of alignment lately, which y'all have probably noticed if you've listened to the last few episodes of this podcast. So I think that doing like a meditation and drinking Tulsi tea, because drinking like really strong herbal teas is both like, it's a taste experience, but it's also like, it's a full sensory experience, right? Because you have like the heat and the warmth, and that's like the touch. You get the smell and the sensation on your face. You get the taste of it. You get like the sounds of boiling kettles of water. You know, it's like, I feel like making tea is like really like an entire sensory experience. So that's magic to me too. The like meditative exercise of doing that while you're.
Well, and I just want to say the main people I've known in my life that were big Tulsi users were tea people.
Yeah.
Like already.
It tracks. So, you know, I think if you want to get specific and you're like, Shannon, how do I do this as like a spell? You could like schedule time on a Thursday, traditionally associated with Jupiter, to do this type of practice. It also, though, you know, having all those head honcho vibes, it's got some like good protective energies, you know, kind of like balancing good and evil by Vishnu is kind of a big deal. So I do think that it's a great recommendation to sprinkle some under your doormat. You know, we're going to say it.
Oh, yeah.
But I also liked the idea. I was thinking about this because I have this wreath that I made on my front door. How cute would it be to take some of the like flower stalks when they come up and dry them and then like tuck the Tulsi flowers into like your wreath on your door?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Craft witch. And I think that it's like, that's something like simple and cute that packs a punch. But really, I'm going to call it here like Tulsi basil, holy basil, huge deal. We love her. I think she's delicious. I'm not actively like trying to get pregnant, so I don't have any reason not to enjoy it. Again, if you are, don't. So today I use like some research on the BBC because of course UK can't get their dick out of India. So, you know, they got all the stuff about like Hindu tradition on the BBC website. I also use like Britannica and like other articles. I didn't just trust the Brits. If anyone from India is listening, I apologize. I also used the herbarium. I used Gardening Know-How, the Strictly Medicinal website. So yeah.
Tulsi.
She's here.
She is here. Okay, so this week we're doing something that I think is very interesting and maybe a little different, but hold on. I am actively looking for my lighter because we're talking about reincarnation, aka Samsara. And
Woo!
Since we've kind of covered some Shinto topics thus far, I mean, you know, I'm kind of personally doing like a deep dive into the research of sort of Eastern philosophy, not for really my own like religious purposes, but just to kind of make sense of what I'll be seeing while I'm over there. And so kind of with that in mind, we did think with the you know, the Ayurvedic medicine of it all with the Tulsi, it might be kind of fun to do a topic on that. So reincarnation, which is like really kind of a big deal in Hinduism, Jainism, Sikhism, and Buddhism. So I guess let's get into it. Reincarnation or samsara is the idea that like your Atman or your soul reincarnates into better or worse reincarnations based on the karma that you accumulate in your lifetime. So kind of the difference of opinion of it all is really kind of part of the defining features of like what is the difference between like Hinduism, Jainism, and Sikhism and Buddhism. So it's really kind of like at the root of a lot of Eastern philosophy is sort of how do you respond to the idea of reincarnation? Because here's my thing, and this is why I was looking for my lighters, because I'm like, basically, we're just going to smoke weed and talk about it. If your reincarnation is based on your karma, which is, you know, sort of all the grand total of all the good deeds and all of the bad deeds that you've done in your entire life, on balance, you know, that's what you've got going into your next life. But it's also part of it that you do not remember your past life. You don't consciously remember your past life. So you go through all of this suffering based on your past life, but you don't really have even like sort of the satisfaction or whatever of like knowing what past you did that means you're like born into famine and poverty and or as a dog, as a homeless dog
A homeless dog
in the street.
I have to say, when you put it that way, it almost starts to feel a little victim blamey.
No, it really does. It really does. And so they sort of address that, like basically actually the sort of debate around reincarnation really is, I think, like one of the main schools of thought in Eastern philosophy, right? Because
Yeah.
this is literally what they sit around thinking about and talking about. So basically there's this idea that like, yes, your reincarnation is determined by your karma in this lifetime, but only up to a certain extent. And that there is this sort of bigger energy in the universe, which is the Dharma, which is sort of like the grand plan,
Yeah.
right? But then there's also this idea of, you know, kind of, is there a soul or is it all just one thing, like one kind of like earth consciousness?
Yeah.
Which it gets really trippy, which is why I'm like, I don't really know. There's so much to kind of wrap your head around here.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do the like you know, the bubble wrap padding version of, because we don't want to blow up anyone's brain, right?
No. And it's like, it's some big philosophy stuff. I mean, I think that I've always personally, and this is just like, again, one lady's opinion. My problem with certain schools of reincarnation is they kind of rub at me in in a bad way, in the way that like sects of Christianity do and like other Abrahamic religions. Is I hate this idea that like some aspects of certain religions feel like it's ways that people in power just like convince themselves that they did it themselves, like that they earned this.
Oh no, it's not just that they earned it, but you say as a peasant, right?
Yeah.
You did something in your past life and now you're paying it off in this life, and you should just accept that you're a peasant and you should like live the life that you were born into. Because
Live the life that you earned, peasant.
Because that is your karmic work and that's going to get you closer to. Now here's the thing. Do we believe that it ends, or do we believe that it's forever? Or as the Jains believe, do we believe that it everyone is reincarnated 8,400,000 times exactly.
That feels too specific for me.
And
I'd never
then
remember.
and you go through apparently all of the reincarnations that one soul needs to go through is 8,400,000.
I mean, who are we to say what that number is?
Well, who are we? And that's really where, I mean, if we're talking about Christianity, if we're talking about the witchy community, I mean, really, when someone tells you, I feel like the thing with Eastern philosophy is like, yeah, you know what? Practicing mindfulness is great.
Yeah.
And yoga is great. And I feel like they slice very close to something that I would call the truth. But
Yeah.
there always is that moment where they're like, this is the truth just because that's what we think the truth is.
Yeah. And I think that it's in the witchy community, in my experience, like the people I know, I feel like we're very much the people that are just like, as soon as someone says this is the truth, the end, we're like, I don't know about that.
I don't know about that. So,
Oh.
but no, I mean, it's like, and you know, there's a short story called The Egg by Andy Weir, I believe, which kind of talks about basically the idea in that is that there's only one soul in our world, in our entire world, that's just reincarnating as everyone and everything.
God, that poor soul. That sounds exhausting.
And then at the end, it's basically God.
So we're God.
Well, and that's really the thing that you know, a lot of this belief in samsara is based on, which is that you are either going to achieve nirvana, and you remove yourself from that cycle, because there's misery inherent in death, like in the cycle of death and rebirth, you know.
Yeah, living sucks. We've always known that.
They're not always going to be hits, right?
Yeah.
But you know, and then it's like, well, what happens if you yourself achieve nirvana? Do you kind of stay behind and help other humans achieve nirvana, which is what some people believe, especially in Buddhism. Like that, you know, that's one of the things of Buddhism is that they almost have like saint kind of structure with it,
Yeah.
where like certain teachers are believed that to have achieved nirvana and to have stayed on to help others achieve nirvana as like sort of permanent spiritual guides.
Which is like a real chill thing to do if you have the ability to just like fuck off to forever vacation.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
props.
Props. But at which point you cannot be reincarnated.
Yeah.
Though. So there's a whole very intricate system of like rules with it, which I just find it, to me, it's very laughable to think that, you know, a human can just kind of know or not know, you know, or be so confident that they know what the cosmic truth is, and just be so, and that's where it gets into like, it is the same as Christianity, it is the same as, you know, Judaism or Islam or anything on our end of the spectrum, the sort of Western world's philosophies that we've been thinking. You know, it's like I think the thing is they've been arguing about this for a lot longer.
Yeah. So I feel like that's why the rules they've laid out for some of these practices. 8,400,000
truly
experiences. Yeah, I think it's also just, to me, I think important to, I feel like sometimes in the West there's this, like, we put Eastern practices on such a pedestal, and I I think that in some ways, like so much about Eastern practices, like you said, are really like fantastic. But I think it's also important to take a step back and make sure that what we're consuming and becoming a part of is actually in alignment with what we believe. And I think that the reincarnation and the whole idea of karma it's kind of a slippery slope to some stuff that to me doesn't sit well.
No, truly, truly, truly. Well, and then there's the whole, I mean, if we really get into kind of the 20th century and beyond, when we have course correction around the feminist issue.
Yeah.
Because these are not like woke religions. They're still very, very patriarchal and like very, very like in the same ways that Christianity and Judaism are very much like women should be in the home, and like it is sort of reinforcing like, because I think the whole like, you know, like convincing people to accept their lot in life, it's very capitalistic too. It's like we need a lower class.
Yeah. And it's like, sure, the idea of being able to divorce yourself from like the need for material goods is like awesome and important, but like you also aren't, it's not fair to put someone's like misfortune on them and make it their fault. It's like that's what community is for. It's supposed to be there to like help lift each other up instead of being like, well, but if you're poor, you definitely had it coming.
I also just think it's so funny, and like not to be so reductive, because I'm just talking about olden times in general, like telling people to like omit their material luxuries, like back when the material luxuries were like a ceramic pot and a rug.
Right.
Like you tell people that nowadays, it's laughable because they're like, I'm limiting my screen time.
Yeah.
And I just, I think the idea of asceticism, though, is important to reincarnation, though, if we're like looking at Eastern philosophy, because that's another two schools of thought. Is like, are you getting good karma by renouncing material possessions and like focusing your life on God and being holy? Or are you getting better karma by like going out and living your life, being fruitful and multiplying and that kind of thing?
Oy. Oy. I also don't like point systems.
I don't like the point system because then it's arbitrary as fuck. But what I will say is I do kind of think the base idea of reincarnation is very interesting to me. We always joke about the pre-womb lounge, but I think I've had some dreams that have had a past life flavor.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, like my own personal beliefs, and I think I've talked about it on here too, is like I believe in reincarnation in the sense that like we know that like energy and matter is not created or destroyed. It is. And so it's like this iteration where I am Shannon is like one experience of this energy that is my current life force. And when I am done using it, will become the energy for something else. It's like, will that be another human? Will it be a cat? Will it be like a carrot? Like, that energy goes somewhere. But I don't think the energy is tied to something like a quote unquote soul. It's like, I feel like I'm getting to borrow this piece of like the universe. And I just get like that cheesy thing where it's like you're a like cosmic being that's experiencing consciousness as opposed to the other way around. It's like we're all part of the cosmos.
Right. No, and that's really where it gets very like think piecey, where it's like,
yeah,
oh, there's one cosmic consciousness, and we're actually only separated from that during our quote unquote lifetime.
yeah,
And it's like that's where it's very like it's all just speculative.
yeah. Oh yeah, there's no like here's the definitive right answer. I mean, God, if we had that, I don't think we'd be podcasting. We'd
And
probably
they've
be retired.
they've tried to devise tests though. You know, sort of like how they sit down the baby that could be the Dalai Lama in front of all the old Dalai Lama's stuff, and they're
Yeah, and
like,
they figure out who gets the right spoon.
right. And you know, like I mean, which all just seems so very arbitrary.
Yeah, have you met babies? They grab shit like no matter what. It doesn't mean they're
That's
necessarily
true.
drawn to
That's
something. Babies just grab
true.
shit.
Babies just be grabbing stuff.
And that's the end of the podcast. Babies just be grabbing stuff.
Well, no, but I think it's funny. You know, I think we did kind of reserve a little spot here just to kind of talk about too, since we're equal opportunity shitters on of organized religion, and like even the Dalai Lama, who seems a charming man.
Yeah,
Uh,
generally.
but also I think the whole like you've been a god king for 80 years, like everyone's fucked up after that.
Yeah, I mean, look, what we see with the Dalai Lama is what we saw with Michael Jackson. You make someone a celebrity from the get-go, it fucks with a person.
Right. It's absolutely going to fuck with you. And you know, it's like
You might tell a young boy to suck on your tongue.
you might tell the young boy to suck on your tongue. Also, why do these people get to be like lifelong appointments? I mean, you kind of
I
think the
hate
same
that.
thing. You kind of think the same thing with like the last pope, where he was just like out scaring the kids because he looked like he was dead.
I mean, hi, England. Speaking of lifetime appointments.
Speaking of lifetime
Oh
appointments,
my God. It's I just think that there's no, and again, this is like organized religion, but really just like I mean, this is such a stoner so I hope y'all are just like enjoying this. But I think it gets to that sort of like power issue too, right? Because it's like what we see with like political structures and the building of empire. It's the same thing. It's just like a different tool for like people building hierarchies for supremacy and power over others. Religion is just one of the tools. And so it's like any organized religion is going to have problems if there's a hierarchy where there are leaders. Because then if there are leaders, there are inevitably people that are below those leaders. And at a certain point, those people will get taken advantage of.
right. And all of that to say, yeah, I think all organized religions are equally ridiculous.
Same.
But I do think, you know, reincarnation kind of separate from its origins is such an interesting idea to think about though, because I also think, what would I want to be reincarnated as?
Oh yeah.
You know, like I think it'd be dope to be an albatross. I think I always say that though. Just like Neverland and
Yeah.
fly over the sea eating fish, like
Yeah. And I've seen like reincarnation, I think also you get into so many different things because I've seen some people too that are like, you know, the journey through the zodiac is part of the reincarnation cycle. So like, you know, if you're in this life as a Virgo, you were a Leo in the previous life. I think if I came back, I mean, I know it's trite, but honestly, like being a house cat would be dope.
being a house cat would be a good one. Or even like, you know, just like a well cared for lap dog.
Oh, yeah. I'd be a little yappy baby.
You know, like a medium old lady's dog.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Where she's not so old she doesn't take her dog out anymore. So
Yeah.
you're not a crusty white dog.
No, you're like Sandy's Yorkies that she had that one of them just died and they lived to be like 18.
Right.
Yeah, that's the mood. I think that being reincarnated as an animal would be cool. But also I'm like I feel like it's also really limiting though to try and think about what I'd want to be reincarnated as, because really what I would love to be reincarnated as is like a life form on an alien planet that's like completely different than this, because that would be fun.
That would see, and that's what I think too, where really though the cycle of reincarnation and death really does not seem that interesting to me unless there is like an alien option.
There has to be.
Like I've seen a hummingbird. I don't need to be a hummingbird.
Yeah, I've been here. I've done Earth. Let's go elsewhere next time.
Right. Like I want to be a floating blob.
Oh my God. I would love to be a person with hot dog fingers.
Or, okay, but then there's kind of the thing where it's like, what if it's not even reincarnation? What if it's just like an infinite number of slightly parallel universes?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that if that's the case, whoever I like, whatever reincarnation or incarnation, Nick, where you and I are two rocks on a cliff, we'll still be two rocks on a cliff. But I think there is something to this idea of reincarnation where it's like you're called to certain people, and I hate the idea. I hate the term soul contract because I fucking know, but.
Right.
I like the idea of you having these like bigger than life like bonds with certain people. Like I have always felt like you and I have been friends in different iterations.
No, and that's definitely something that I was going to bring up because it's like, it's hard not to think about reincarnation as like a firmer belief when I think about like, yeah, I do feel like we have known each other before.
Yeah.
And like we joke about like the pre-womb lounge, but like I said, kind of circling back around, I have had dreams before where it very much has, and you know, I'm someone who appreciates aesthetics. So like I definitely had dreams that were like in other decades. And one does have to wonder, it's like, how is my brain sort of faithfully recreating this just based on like what I know about those decades, or like that seems like a lot of work, especially when most dream stuff is not that coherent anyway. Like,
yeah, no, I've had like very specific eras of dreams. For me, it's often will be like very pre-modernity are probably some of the more common ones I have, like old school village type stuff.
oh sure.
And you know, it's like, again, I'm a creative person. It's a much shorter like line to connect the points between reincarnation and those dreams versus my subconscious and some of those dreams.
Right. I mean, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like that doesn't constitute proof by any means.
Nope, because you can't prove it.
Especially not for another person. But, and that's really where it does get in, it has to get into the realm of like belief, right?
Yeah.
Where if you believe that you've had certain dreams that like were from a past life, then you know that's a belief. But you can't really call that proof. Although I would say one of the really interesting things just from people trying to like have these arguments over centuries and centuries of time was they have used dreaming as sort of proof that there is consciousness separate from the body, which I think is such an interesting conclusion to come to, like pre-industrial revolution. Like like they did seem to have some understanding of consciousness and unconsciousness, and like they really were thinking about thinking a lot.
I did have to take a fucking freshman year seminar class as part of like my undergrad degree at UT, and it was called Thinking About Thinking Across the Disciplines.
Oh sure. I mean,
that's what it is.
That's what it is. But it's like yeah, reincarnation. You're never gonna prove it.
You can't.
Like,
we're not all Dory Seif. We didn't come back and just know what was gonna happen.
Right.
Well,
yeah. Okay. I guess it's time for Taroscope.
Yeah.
Which I'm having trouble finding my zodiac cards because I do have 2 cats, which is just absolutely too many. but I did have a backup plan, which is that we're doing it for Taurus season, which I actually, okay, here's how I interpret this reading, because I got strength reversed on the dragon deck, which, you know, what a beautiful card. I am going to
That
show
was
it
a really pretty card.
right side up with this kind of forest on the bottom and like space up top and like this sun.
Yeah, the sun's gorge.
It's a gorgeous card. It's a gorgeous card. But strength reverse would basically be saying kind of take a step back, build up your energy reserves, you know, to do some self-care time. But I kind of think truly like as a tarot scope and just kind of maybe even for the Tauruses I know in my life, it's like you maybe this is not the year to like have a birth month, you know?
Yeah.
Like we get it, like we love you, you love you, we all get to love you for your entire Taurus season, but it's also kind of like, you know, maybe you don't have to go that hard this year.
Like maybe it's honoring your body to do some resting.
Right. So, you know, so much to think about, Tauruses.
Much indeed. Much indeed. Well, and I guess a few little baby asks then here at the end. Rate, review,
Yeah, a little
subscribe.
rate, review, subscribe. I mean, honestly, I'm gonna bring this back. This podcast was good. Would be a great thing that you could like if you're giving
5
us
stars.
if you're giving us 5 stars anyway, just that sentence alone could really bump up our profile. And
Yeah,
so that we can be included when people look up good podcasts, because they're not gonna know otherwise.
I do also just have to say, our overall Spotify rating is like 4.7 stars. So I'd really love to hear from whoever gave us less than 5 stars.
Like more than 4 stars.
But less than 5. So I'm like, you know, like I'm super stoked that people were reviewing it. I'd love to know why someone felt like we got a 4-star review. I'd love to hear how we could gain back that 5th star from you.
I'd love to run into this person maybe in a darkened back alleyway and just talk to them about why they couldn't
why they only gave us 4 stars.
Why they couldn't just do the 5.
Not in a scary, violent way at all, but like,
no. It's not the middle of Aries season. We're not threatening anyone.
We would never. That would be irresponsible.
Anyway, so what do we say to all those reincarnated witches out there?
All those reincarnated witches. Blessed be, bitches.
Blessed be, bitches.
Goodbye. Okay.